and on Monday, Wednesday, right? Yeah, Monday. We at the collective hold our sociology to standards of solidarity together against this enacted violation of past practices that implements quizzes and monitored attendance. We expect the participation portion of the lecture to reflect the past practices that were usually agreed upon course of conduct. This included, as illustrated on the class syllabus, attendance and engagement in lecture and discussion section, demonstrated interest, completion of occasional class assignments, communication, and other factors. The term other factors is ambiguous in nature due to its wording and determines direct past practices, which include asking or answering questions, bringing in outside materials, providing examples, talking to the waiter outside of class, visiting office hours, communicating via email, in addition to the dynamics of the class that were established over the last 9 weeks. We will not be taking the quizzes and instead expect a nullification of these deterministic materials in one way in favor of a return to the small group work in class discussions such as the president's participation in this class. We have not signed the strike laws nor barriers to strike further to demonstrate our symbolic power and solidarity. There is not only less time to teach us with these unnecessary quizzes, but these individual assessments are valuable to establish an agreed upon set of practices and our status as an organized and collective whole.
There were one or two places where it got a little fuzzy. Would it be okay if I borrowed someone's hard copy to read them over to make sure I understood the copy? Okay. So I have a few responses. We never set a length of time before we go back to the regular lecture. Any suggestions? It's about 4:47, 4:48 by my watch. So I propose until 5 o'clock.
Okay, but we do reserve the right to strike the quizzes if we don't come to a mutual understanding.
I understand. I'm putting out a proposal for a time limit so we can get to instructional material today.
Okay, all right, let's take it from there.
It can always be, either party can propose to extend, and we'll if we get to 5 o'clock, and either party wants more time. Agreed?
Okay.
So my first response would be occasional in-class assignments. Quizzes would fall into that by my interpretation. And aside from that's a technical approach. My other comment I'm a little bit out of it today. So my other comment is really more of a question. What do you all see as the pedagogical value of this activity today?
Well, I mean, this is an example of the fact that you have to, negotiate and renegotiate when things don't necessarily work out, or as an example, things are changed as in past practices. There was no attendance sheet required for the first 8 weeks of the class, and so now that it's being required, it's going against past practice, as well as the fact
So you're continuing to mobilize in solidarity in defense of your rights.
Part of the sit-in movement last time, just a continuation.
We're also resisting a divide and conquer approach that we feel might have been employed against us.
How will that divide you? Everyone took the same quiz.
You divided us by having Dwayne police us like we were going to cheat.
Dwayne's
And
not in
treat-
your
You
union.
treat, he's not our union, he's part of your, he's underneath you. You had him police us like someone's gonna cheat, which made us seem like other people are doing more work than
There's
others.
the line boss. Dwayne's the line boss.
Don't drag me into this.
It's dehumanizing. That's what it is.
I understand. That's part of why I asked you what the pedagogical value of this is, because everything that I've done as instructor prior to and including Monday has been of pedagogical value.
Well,
Right.
with like, on that subject, it's that no union ever wins with, one marking session, and also predominantly it's a bureaucratic structure where, you meet in a separate location than where the conflict is, and it's not resolved in one day. This is, an example of the fact that unions don't get what they want after one aggressive bargaining session. It takes a lot of time and continued mobilization to keep the goal of the union alive and what we're asking for. We gotta protect that.
That's true. That's definitely true. That's part of why I provoked you all.
And even your actions towards with all those quizzes and having Dwayne walk down the aisles, it was kind of a form of you retaliating to our union, as we've seen employers do when unions go back to work. There's new structures that are implemented to keep them at a certain, control them in a certain way where they think they're getting their rights and the company is also getting their little bit.
Yeah, it creates this antagonistic oppositional relationship, right? And to a degree, I played into that as well by behaving very antagonistically and oppositionally to you on Monday in response to you all deciding to formalize our relationship as such. So your proposal is basically that all of that, everything I did on Monday be dropped in exchange for nothing, in exchange for your attendance in the class.
No, in exchange for using the past practices of the class, which were doing like in-class discussions, we could end up using the same quiz material that you would have, used, and we would still be proving our attendance in class by discussing the material like we had the rest of the quarter.
Okay.
Small groups and presenting.
What is the fundamental goal of your union? Like, what are you after in the end?
But we're here to prove that it's a better method than just the regular run-of-the-mill type of education. This is a much better structure that even we're implementing still. The bargaining process, we're showcasing our knowledge in different avenues that are not too, widespread as they
And like this union, we're trying to learn from a hands-on perspective. And like on Monday, the aggressive retaliation at least taught me that, unions can't win just right away. Like there's a process. There are things that in this class environment would be a lot harder out in the real world. Like as an example, we have a discussion section without the boss, so it's easier to unionize than say out there. So the goal of the union is to like understand that and prove that and fight for something.
It's like a mandatory workers' center provided to us.
From where I'm sitting, I'm concerned that the goal of the union is to preserve high grades for everyone, regardless of whether or not they deserve those grades based on their understanding of the material that I've tried to communicate in the class.
I think we're working off of the kind of principles that you discussed in terms of like equal work for equal labor. All of us in forming this union have put in energy and work, like dependent on the kind of resources that we had at the time in order to like, the kind of, honestly, like the amount of work we put into this it's been way more than what we would have put in studying for the midterms or studying for the quizzes. Like, this is the experience of doing it was, I think, why we're doing it. Like the experience, the kind of transformative experience of like going through the actions of doing these processes, and that's why we're doing this, that's why the union exists.
And it's kind of like, sorry, no, not raising my hand yet. It's just like kind of like also teaching us, you know, not to settle for maybe like less than you deserve in a workplace. If you're like, if your boss is giving you something and you think it's fair at first, but it's really teaching you to think critically about the situation before you just like blindly accept terms.
And we're still learning, and this is still part of the process. And also, we take it seriously because we came, even on Monday, there wasn't a large amount of students that were gone and just, oh, the protest is over, let's just, ditch. We all still, there was a large number of students that came, paid attention. It wasn't like attendance just went off the hill. So we're taking this completely seriously. We're not just looking for like, oh, let's just get out and do some work.
How many people did the reading for today?
Our search local too.
It's better than numbers than before.
We discussed if we wanted to discuss it in section yesterday, and I think something that we haven't necessarily touched upon yet is the pedagogical value of this union. And in addition to the previously mentioned goals, I just want to mention that our goal is also to demonstrate that we have met course objectives. And one of those I have right here. It's creativity and interpreting the significance and consequences of various strategic and tactical approaches in furthering the interests of workers and managers. And I think this is definitely illustrating creativity and strategic decisions, their outcomes, things like that. The other, the other 4 objectives we all feel we have met as well. As most of us, all of us, we can now talk about our movement in terms of labor vocabulary. We're recognizing the importance of unions as we organize one. So I just want to emphasize that we have definitely looked at course objectives and have used the syllabus as much as we possibly can.
You question us of our motives, but what are your motives, Ted? Are they really so different from ours? You want to teach us what we need to know for this class. We want to learn what we need. By showing that maybe our goals aren't so different, we're redefining the student-teacher relationship as any labor movement would seek to do.
How does this redefine student-teacher relationship? This looks like it's oppositional.
But we're trying to
Student-teacher relationship is always oppositional.
I think in most cases people aren't aware of it. For me, that's been, this whole process has been becoming aware in a way that it never was of the kind of things that are happening, things that happen because of like where you stand and where you're sitting and how you react in relation to that. Like that's something that I know that all of us have learned and experienced in a way that we never would have by just being part of the regular structure of class where we sit in class and take attendance.
And normally bargaining sessions are semi-aggressive, or we use that case because in the real world, someone is ending up giving way a little bit. So there's always going to be opposition. And after Monday with this, it proves that we've understood that and continue to mobilize.
And I'm glad that you did. Now I'm gonna drop the asshole manager role that I played on Monday, and I'm gonna speak to you directly. Because I'm pretty sure you all realize that was a performance on some level. I had worse ideas. Instead of having Dwayne police you, I thought about asking for a volunteer for extra credit at the beginning. They're not telling them why.
Against us.
And that person, whoever volunteered, would not only get extra credit, but would not have to take the quiz. As a way of divide and conquer. I was getting advice from various people, including Casey, who was one of the panelists that we had a few weeks ago.
Oh, that bastard.
Casey has some bad ideas. Can I propose extending for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
How about 10?
We'll
Yeah, that
allow
sounds
that.
good.
How about
That's
30 minutes?
We can do 5 and see what happens.
Yeah.
So here's the thing, just being completely straightforward with the process. What I would consider a radical outcome for the union to push for would not be a replication of the antagonistic relationships of student and instructor. What I see from my point of view, which is obviously playing the managerial role in this public drama, is that you're trying to seize control of the criteria on which you are graded, right? And by doing so, that makes those criteria less, not that you're not learning things, it's obvious to me that you're learning things, but by seizing control and trying to manage those criteria yourselves, on some level it makes them less valid as tools of actually measuring what you know. It's like a fox in charge of the hen house kind of a situation. What I would personally consider to be the most radical outcome is not an antagonistic oppositional relationship, but one where students and teacher are of equal status in negotiating the terms on which students are evaluated, right? And there's a little bit of a fine line here, because the number one thing that I'm bothered by in this process is by giving 100% on the second midterm, I regret doing that. Not because I want anybody to get poor grades, but because if the class average comes out to an 85%, that doesn't necessarily help anybody. It means that I didn't do a good job of setting up rigorous standards for determining knowledge. It means that good evaluations don't count for anything, because of course everyone's going to love the class where you do well, right? So what I would propose is that what you're asking for here is you're asking to infringe on my instructional prerogative to determine how you're evaluated in the class, right? And this is my discretion. You want a voice in my discretion, right? If you want, in exchange for that, what are you offering? Are you offering a new mode of evaluating learning? Or are you just offering...
I have a question. Well, like, what if we've, like, already submitted our evaluations and we don't know our grades? Like, that's what I've already submitted mine, and I don't know my final grade, so how are they gonna say, like, oh, she got a good grade and that's why she liked it, when it's like, it's obviously been submitted before finals?
They don't know that.
Oh, they don't know, like, when you submit it?
They just know they're all in the window. And they're before you get your final grades. I'm saying, you know, one of the problems, when you hear people criticize unions, they usually criticize them because they protect bad workers in addition to good, right? Is there anything, should a union be concerned with a fireable offense? So a union should be concerned on some level with the quality of work that's being done. And that's my concern as an instructor, is the quality of work being done. So if you want to have a voice in that process, we have to discuss what you consider would be a more fair criteria for measuring these, I hate this phrase, but for lack of a better word, learning outcomes, right? If you don't like the way that I'm measuring your knowledge, what would be a more fair way of measuring that knowledge? Not just giving everybody blanket 100% on an exam. That doesn't measure the knowledge that you've gotten. What would be a fair way that you, if you all were in charge of the class, that you had equal voices as me in determining assignments and grading criteria, what would those be?
We still
Right?
have,
Take on some of the responsibility of determining the grading. If you wanted to have a voice in it, take on some of the responsibility of determining that as well.